Hey guys, Scott here. Today we're going to go over the patch notes for 8.4.0. I already covered the Hound Master in the previous video. This is just going to be a video going over all the perks that have been changed or added, and the changes to killers and the changes to any maps, and also we're going to very briefly talk about the new map, the new Ormond Map as well. So first, let's go with the killer perks. The first one is All Shaking Thunder. In a nutshell, this just gives you the effect of coup de grace, which is an extended lunge whenever you fall a very small amount or any amount as a killer. It's actually more common to proc this than you would think, but it is a very map-dependent perk. So on some maps that are just, just completely flatter than my ass, you're probably not really going to get much value from this. You can try to do it in Shack with basement stairs. Even that's a guaranteed drop on most maps. But I would say this is a very map dependent perk. There are certain maps where you get this almost every loop due to uneven terrain and slight drop offs. It's very sensitive, so you don't need a very large drop for this to become active. But the funny part is it stacks with coup as well, so you can have basically an 150% longer lunge. It's really funny, and I messed around a lot with that in the PTB, so I enjoyed that a lot. It's very, very silly, and overall, strength-wise, very, very map-dependent, but very good when it's a good map for you, and not so great when it's not. So next is Jagged Compass. This is a Scourge hook perk that makes it so whenever a survivor is unhooked from a non-Scourge hook, that hook permanently becomes a Scourge hook. It also has an effect whenever you hook someone on that hook, you see the gem with the most progress, so it has its own built-in value as well, in addition to buffing the overall effect of Scourge hook builds. But the little effect is sort of like a barbecue and chili effect, where it shows kind of where you want to go next, because it's going to show the generator that's got some progress on it. So it's a pretty nice perk if you're frustrated with Scourge hook RNG sometimes. You can make your own army of Scourge hooks anywhere. If you want to control one particular area, like this on Dead Dog when you're trying to hold the 3 gem, but there's no Scourge hooks there, you can make Scourge hooks, and that can be pretty good if you combo with things like Pain Res, Gift of Pain, things like that. So overall, I feel like Scourge hook builds aren't quite strong enough to justify this yet, but it has its own nice little built-in effect as well for letting you know where to go after a hook. So no matter what, it's still going to give you some decent value as a weird alternative to barbecue and chili, which also dodges aura blocking from Shadow Step or something like that. So kind of interesting way to look at that, but overall, it's a pretty decent perk. Next is No Quarter. This is basically Merciless Storm for self-care. I don't really know how good this is going to be. I actually think this is probably not going to be a good perk, at all. Now, if they are interrupted by the killer, so if you combine this with other healing-related things, Coulrophobia, Sloppy Butcher, any type of Mangled, Hemorrhage, things like that, then I could see it being better, because if the survivor is spending more time healing, it's more likely you'll have a chance to interrupt them, which is going to make them broken. But at the same time, I think the broken is unnecessary, because if you do have Mangled and Hemorrhage and you interrupt a heal, they're losing 20 seconds of progress just like that, whether they're broken for that time or not. Now you're probably chasing them. Overall, I think this is probably the weakest perk of the new killer. It still has its uses, but it's more of a meme than anything in my opinion. So it's not amazing, but I could see it being used on anti-heal builds. Now for the survivor perks, the first one is Treacherous Crows. This is a very in-depth and somewhat interesting perk, and I'm not sure if it's that great. It's an invocation, which means you need to go activate it in the basement, just like weaving spiders, but the effect is, it's hard to tell. So basically, when a survivor is in the territories of a killer and the killer scares a crow, everybody sees the killer's aura for 2 seconds. So that can be decent, especially if you can combine it with things like Eyes of Belmont. It can be pretty decent. But the downside is you're permanently broken, like the other invocation perk. So it does give a ton of information to your team at a somewhat consistent rate. Again, it depends on the map. Sometimes crows are not in that great of a position for standard looping. They're more on the outskirts of maps and things like that. So again, this is a very map-dependent perk. Is it worth the 60 seconds in the basement and the perma injure? Probably not. I could see this being kind of useful for solo queue, because it sort of gives everybody that built-in communication, which is kind of nice, but I don't think it's worth the downside of the perma broken and the time you have to spend in the basement, so not great. Clean Break. Whenever you finish healing another survivor while being healed by another survivor, press the ability button to become broken. After 60 seconds, you become healthy. So this is sort of, I thought this was going to be great. I thought it's, after you heal a survivor, sort of like how Second Wind activates, you can essentially syringe yourself, but it takes a full minute, which is a really long time to remain, broken. But however, this only activates when another survivor starts healing you, and then you basically back off from the heal and then can go do your own thing. So it doesn't have that benefit of a syringe where you just slap a syringe on yourself, keep working on a gen. You need another survivor to come initiate the perk, and because of that, I don't think it's that amazing. If you were able to activate your that effect yourself, this would be a very, very good perk. But the fact is, if a survivor needs to activate it for you, I mean, at that point, just let him heal you for 16 seconds, unless like the killer's right there. But if the killer's right there, then, you need to loop the killer for 60 seconds because you're going to be broken that whole time, at which point you might not even benefit from the perk entirely. So, I don't really think that perk is particularly amazing due to the fact that it requires someone else to heal you. It is nice to just it's basically like slapping a really bad syringe on someone, but they need to know that you have that and plan around that. So, it's okay. I don't think that's terrible, but it's sort of whatever. Next is Shoulder the Burden, which is really cool. This is a perk I and a lot of other content creators have had an idea about roughly for a while, where essentially you trade a hook state with somebody else. This is extremely good at preventing tunneling. If someone's on death hook, you can essentially, you can take them off the hook and remove one of their hook states rather than have them be on the dying state or being on death hook when they're off their hook. So it's also interesting. It's the first time they've ever mentioned the actual phrase death hook in a description of something. It's been a colloquial term for a while, but they've actually called your second to last hook the death hook now, which is cool. So this is really good. This is very, very strong for supporting people that are getting tunneled. However, it's got a pretty nasty downside where you become exposed when you do this. So if the killer is proxy camping and they see you going for the save and then they go to interrupt that and the other guy's on death hook, you basically have to go down yourself. So we're going to see a lot of people combine this with something like Unbreakable because, you're probably going to go down with this. And we can also see this combined with things like Deliverance, Decisive Strike. There are definitely a lot of builds that can use this to very, very strong effect. If you have an anti-tunnel build and you essentially call the killer to tunnel you yourself, but you have the build for that, you can prepare for that situation way better than maybe a random teammate that doesn't have that build. So you can save them, incentivize the killer to tunnel you, and you have a build to deal with getting tunneled. That's why it's so powerful, especially in something like solo queue. It can be really good at taking the heat off someone that might not have a build equipped to deal with tunneling. So that is a very strong perk, and that will be meta in a lot of circumstances. So really, really good there. By far the best perk. Next, we have the new map. It was the new lake map, and I played on it for a little while, and I kind of liked it. The main building is decently strong. It has a fairly weak window from one side, but pretty strong on another. It's got a god window downstairs, but it's a breakable wall to make it not a god window. Size wasn't too bad at all. There were a couple of the Greenville Square loops with like the two pallets right next to each other. Overall, it seemed okay. I played on it maybe 5 or 6 times. I didn't have any major complaints about it, so we'll see. I think you need more time playing on a map for people to learn the intricacies of how to actually run it properly, but I had no major complaints. I thought the atmosphere was cool, very The Thing-like. I also had a lot of Gary's Mod and like Modern Warfare vibes from it too. Overall, it was a cool map. I'm not upset with it at all. We'll see how it goes once people learn it, but overall, pretty good stuff. Next, Survivor Activity HUD Improvements. Now you see the progress bar of basically every action that a survivor can take, whether it's healing or doing a generator or opening a chest or breaking a totem. Anything that has a progress bar, you now see their progress bar. Interestingly, they didn't comment on whether or not you can see a survivor's anti-face camp bar. I'm not sure if they did that. I haven't gotten a chance to play Survivor yet. I've only been playing the killer to test it, but that is sort of a no-brainer that they need to add. So if they didn't add that, they really need to add that. If they did, then ignore what I just said. A new activity to differentiate when a survivor is mending or healing themselves. That's always a nice interaction there. Just more information is always good. Same thing with totems as well. But overall, these are great changes. Seeing the progress of a heal across the map is very useful. You can also gather whether or not a survivor will make it across the map, or a survivor has, resurgence, or you can get a lot of information about what people have in solo queue with this, and it doesn't benefit Survivor Friends really in any way. So that's really, really useful, and I don't see how there's any possible complaints about that. More information for solo queue is always good. There's now a visual differentiation between a perk being temporary unavailable and being disabled completely. This is mostly for things like, weaving spiders, like the invocations that just shut off entirely. So that's a nice little whatever. Character bios are now back on... Oh, the powers and perks are back on bio pages. That's okay, whatever. And then some sword updates or whatever. Now we're going to the killer changes. First up, vampire form for the cooldown for Hellfire has been increased to 10 seconds from 7 seconds on Dracula. I think that is fine. Basically, this is kind of what I wanted them to do. I kind of wanted them to tone down bat form, not necessarily Hellfire, and then increase the power of wolf form a bit. And that's sort of what they did. They increased the shapeshift cooldown to 3.5 seconds, which again, I don't think that was the issue. Shapeshift cooldown, it's not the time from when you change into a different form and you can swing. That's the thing that I don't like. That where you can turn into a bat and swing 1 second later out of bat form, that's the thing I don't like. Switching into another form again in 2.5 seconds, whatever. I don't think that's a big deal. I'm okay with that cooldown being low. But a lot of people think those are the same numbers, but they're not. There's two separate values there, and I always think you can swing too fast after switching forms, and I think that's the main issue. So they didn't really address that, but they did buff wolf form a little bit by making Centaur spawn a bit faster, and they also made Pounce's charge time a bit faster as well. Very welcome change. I think the Hellfire cooldown, I'm neutral. It was unnecessary, but fine. Okay, that's whatever. So overall, probably a step in the right direction. I still think bat form is too good, with the cooldown being way too fast. Like a 1 second swing out of it is ridiculous. So other than that, though, I think that's more along the lines of what I wanted Dracula to be like, but we'll see. Demogorgon, very minor changes to setting portals. The speed is increased by 0.15 seconds, and entering the portal is faster by 0.15 seconds. Very, very minor changes. However, the travel speed while you're in the Upside Down going between portals is notably faster, from 20 to 28 meters a second. So that is a pretty significant upgrade in terms of your actual movement speed getting to places with portals. That's really, really nice. A couple of add-ons were changed. They basically added a lot of these effects to base kit. One of the weird things they did was take away Lifeguard Whistle's main effect, where you can see the Killer Instinct effect without having to hold your power. That was a really nice add-on, and they removed that effect and just made you have 2 more portals. I'm not really sure that that's a great change. Back when I made Demogorgon, I never really needed more than like 4 or 5 portals. You just put them in general areas. You're not like a hag or something where you want to trap every single generator or something like that. You can, but that's not a super amazing way to play him, although it might be more viable now with faster traversing. So overall, they just added some add-ons base kit and took away one effect of a very strong add-on. So it's all right. Ghostface. Decreased Night Shroud cooldown to 17 seconds from 20 seconds. That's fine. I think they did this because Ghostface's kill rate is actually quite low. But really all they did was just put add-ons into base kit and then nerf the add-ons. They did this with a lot of killers this patch. Not particularly interesting, but welcome changes. Less reliance on add-ons are better. I would have loved to see Spirit like less reliant on Rusty Flute, which is like a 40% cooldown reduction, and have 20% base and 10% add-on. Stuff like that. I kind of want them to keep doing that with more killers, because add-on reliance is never a good thing. So all these things are very simple, but they're all welcome changes. So again, these are just add-ons adding to base kit and nerfing the add-ons that had those same effects. Scamper is now even faster, but I'm okay with that because scampering is now more of a high skill maneuver. You can't just go under a pallet and smack someone. You are going to be in slice and dice when you're doing that. So I'm actually okay with them buffing that. That's fine in my opinion. They did a slight nerf to the cooldown of Hidey-Ho mode, 2 more seconds. I honestly would have liked to see a few more, maybe like 14 seconds, but whatever, I'll take it. Slight nerf to Chucky. He's still going to be insanely good, so not a huge deal there. Rat Poison, luckily, was nerfed. It was the add-on that every single Chucky ran. It gave you way too much information for free, so they halved the range, and they have the duration of it. So it'll be still pretty decent for close range encounters and getting a good idea of where people are, but it's not going to be just a free AoE reveal for just finding people randomly when you're using your power on a very short cooldown. So Rat Poison nerf was very welcome, and I think that's completely deserved. So for the Lich, for Vecna, they did a couple of interesting things. They just nerfed the overall cooldowns by a little tiny bit. However, Fly has a significantly nerfed cooldown. Again, Bat form is better in every way and has 0 cooldown, so I don't understand how these two it makes no sense. But Fly does have a much shorter cooldown now, from basically 40 to 25 seconds, which is really good. So I always found Fly to be really fun, trying to cut people off. Perfectly canceling it to phase through a window, but maintain collision to body block was always really cool. So I like that. Being able to use it better or more often is really good. And I like that spells now have like different cooldowns. That's a pretty interesting thing. They also nerfed Mage Hand's cooldown for some reason by 2 seconds, whatever. Okay. And they also made it so the add-ons that affected cooldowns are nerfed. So again, just sort of base kit things. The only major change here is Fly being significantly faster in terms of cooldown. Other than that, though, it's more just the same of adding base kit add-ons. And again, I'm completely okay with that, but I feel like it's not very interesting. They also nerfed Dispelling Sphere for some reason. I don't know why. Next, actually, Wesker was slightly buffed by having a very small buff to his add-on, but then, or I'm sorry, very small buff to his cooldown, but then the add-on that did that was nerfed. So again, same thing. Very consistent what they're doing with all the killers here. Myers, a couple of fairly notable changes, one of which I'm super happy about. For one, Evil Within in tier 1 is now 110% movement speed, so this is like Hag and Huntress movement speed, rather than being 105%. He was the only killer in the game that was exactly 105% nerf, so it was slower than that, but it was a very awkward time being in tier 1, so that's a very welcome buff there. The maximum stock per survivor is now 20 points, was 10, so basically you can stalk people more, you can get even more of your Evil Within. You should be able to get like 10 Evil Withins a game now with no add-ons, which is, you're never going to need that many. If you haven't won by then you deserve to have everyone maxed out. It's just, that's so many that it's basically infinite. The amount of Evil Within required to get to tier 2 is also significantly less by almost half, which is really, really good, because tier 1 Myers is a very unfun time to be, unless you're on like Larry's or something like that. It sucks being in tier 1 Myers. So he's faster and gets out of tier 1 faster. Almost to the point where I feel like you don't even need tier 1 anymore. He could just be tier 2 and tier 3 and just have like no Teridius in tier 2 and that'd be like his main power. Then he might actually be a pretty damn good killer. But, you know, I'm okay with that. It's going to be much faster getting out of tier 2 now. The Evil Within gain multiplier when stalking from afar is 1. And the gain multiplier from up close is now 0.4 from 1. So basically what they did is exactly what I've been suggesting for Myers for years and years. The whole thing with Myers is he stalks people from afar. Myers doesn't go like up to Laurie in the movie and just go like, hey, I'm stalking you, I'm going to get Evil Within now. No, he does it like behind a fence across the street, and that's thematic of his real power. So now when you're stalking people from really far away, you gain it much, much faster, so you can gain Evil Within, 3, for example, from tier 1 in just 3 seconds of stalking. So that's going to be much, much faster. Additionally, you gain a bit less, so there's less incentive to just 99 people and smack them. You can still do this, obviously, but you need to be completely topped off instead of pretty close now, because now you're going to stalk slower up close rather than farther away. So I love the change that they made here. It's way more thematic. I've been wanting that for a while, so it's perfect. I think that is a really good idea, and that's going to get Myers out of the lower tiers much faster, so that's great. Now, they changed some add-ons to compensate for this. Fragrant Tuft of Hair has been nerfed significantly. It requires twice as much Evil Within to get to that level. This is the Infinite Tier 3 add-on. Lock of Hair requires 50% from 100%. Judah's Tombstone requires 20 from 10. So basically, Fragrant Tuft of Hair and Tombstone now require the same amount of stalking to get to Tier 3, which is a lot. You need to stalk people a lot to get to that. So that's going to be, a solid 20 seconds of just looking at survivors that are not maxed out. However, because the maximum amount per survivor is different, it does alleviate that in a pretty significant amount. Because if you played like a Tombstone build, you'd have to fully stalk someone, go somewhere else, fully stalk someone, go somewhere else, and then stalk someone about halfway, and then you'd be pretty close to it. But now, because you can stalk survivors for a longer amount per person, you don't have to juggle people as much to get these. So I'm pretty sure that's why they made these changes, so it makes sense. Tombstone Piece now requires 15 from 7.5, so again, they're just basically doubling the amount of stock you require for all these extremely strong add-ons. And for some reason, Scratch Mirror is still, it retains the 4.2 meters a second. So if you want to run Scratch Mirror, you're back down 105%. Completely unnecessary. Myers is not a killer that needs nerfs to Scratch Mirror. I'm sorry. Scratch Mirror is just a really bad add-on. It's good on like 3 maps. And even then, it's not amazing. It's just okay. So it did not need a nerf at all. It's not a nerf. I guess it's more of a side grade because it got buffed, but then that negates the upgrade. So whatever. So overall, I think I mostly like the changes. I'll have to play him a bit more, but I think these stalking changes are going to be very, very good for him. Next, Dominance. This is Dracula's perk. The first time each totem and each chest is interacted with by a survivor, that totem or chest is blocked by the entity for 8, 12, 16 seconds. So it's just going to be blocked longer now. I tried using Dominance a bunch, and I ended up not liking it. It's kind of okay on killers that can do something about it at a distance, like Doctor or like even Artist or something, but overall, I ended up not liking the perk too much, and if I wanted to go for like a pure Hex build, I would go Undying or Thrill the Hunt or something like that. So it's good that they buffed that. I do think it needed a buff. 16 seconds is significantly longer, so that's pretty good. Human Greed, you see unopened chests, auras, and survivors' auras revealed for 3 seconds when they enter an 8-meter range. You also gain the ability to kick chests to close them. Ability has a 20-second cooldown, was 30 seconds, so just slight cooldown. That perk is not very good. Languid Touch, this is the Crow Exhaustion perk. The perk has a 5-second cooldown, was 20 seconds. That is a pretty significant buff. So you would have a crow trigger the perk on someone you might not even be, chasing. They get exhausted, you don't even notice, and then the other guy you are chasing, now the perk's on cooldown. 5-second cooldown, that is a hell of a buff. So that is actually pretty good. Languid Touch, Stonks, definitely rising there. That's really good. Weave Attunement. When any item becomes depleted for the first time each match, it is dropped. See the auras of dropped items. Survivors in 8 meters of dropped items have their auras revealed to you. Was 12 meters, so a little bit of a nerf to Weave Attunement. Franklin's Weave was pretty meta, so I can kind of understand that. Now, affected survivors can see the item's aura. So that does give survivors way more information on where to not approach to trigger the Weave Attunement effect. So that is a pretty significant nerf. I am pretty sure they were seeing a lot of Franklin's Weave, so that might be a little overkill on the nerf. I never thought Franklin's Weave was that amazing because you had to basically run 2 perks. Half your build is just for that aura rating. It definitely can be good, but I'm not sure if it needed that much of a nerf. Decrease the time it takes to unlock chests to 8 seconds. That's fine. Unlocking chests is typically not really ever a good action to do for optimal play anyway, so I'm totally okay with that. Survivor perk updates. When retrieving an item from a chest, there's a 100% chance that an ultra rare or lower add-on will be attached to it. So this will allow you to gain things like syringes and BMPs. That's pretty good. So I would say overall, you're going to roll the dice. You might get really lucky and get something really nice there. And there's also a 100% chance of finding an add-on of uncommon, rarity, or lower on top of that too, where it was 50. So you're going to get a pretty stacked item now almost every time. So, and it also still has the effect of you letting you keep your add-on. So pretty nice buffs to Ace in the Hole. Buckle Up, updated the perks description for clarity. Not even sure what that means. Weaving Spiders, just description changes. Unlocking chests is now 100% faster with Pharmacy. Was 80% faster. The hearing distance for noises from unlocking chests reduced by 20 meters was 8 meters. Damn, that's a hell of a buff. Pharmacy guarantees an emergency medkit upon completing the interaction. That's good. So now it's sort of back to how Pharmacy used to be, where it is basically just always in effect. You're always going to get a green medkit when you open your first chest. That's really good. So that's kind of how it used to be. And green green medkits have been nerfed quite a bit. So it's not like super OP or anything like that. So overall, I think that's a good change. And stealth unlocking chests is actually pretty nice too, because they are very, very loud sound. And that's overall very good buff. Plunderer's Instinct. The aura of unopened chests and items in the environment are revealed to you when standing within 64 meters range. Was 32, so they essentially doubled the range of Plunderer's Instinct, which is really nice. And it also increases the rarity of getting, your items from chests by a little bit more. It was like 46%, now it's 50%, so very small buff there, but just a huge AoE increase, which is nice. Scene Partner. What do they change here? I remember reading this earlier. I think they just buffed the aura duration from 5 to 6 seconds. The cooldown is now 40 seconds instead of 60 seconds, so very minor changes there. Cooldown change is nice, but the duration is not really much notice there. Again, everything else is just some perk bug fixes, bot fixes, things like that. But those are the overall perks and changes that are coming to killers. I think it's pretty decent so far. I kind of was disappointed that we didn't get more unique changes. It's mostly just add-on base kit, nerf add-on, add-on base kit, nerf add-on, add-on base kit, nerf add-on, and then some more interesting things like Myers and stuff like that. But overall, not particularly exciting or amazing. The new map's pretty good.